For people who are into arts or who are passionate about something very creative, it's always a challenge to maintain a steady stream of income while pursuing what they absolutely love. Today, we're going to be talking to somebody who happens to be an actor, loves that profession, yet he's using real estate to build a steady stream of income. From being an actor to a real estate investor. Today, we're talking with Bassam, and we're talking about the transition for him, his wife. Number one, why would you want to be an actor? And then why would you want to keep acting and yet get into real estate? The two combos don't go together because one is extremely creative and the other one is all about discipline. So, Bassam, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, Ben, whenever somebody says actor, right, we have a picture of what an actor is, and most of the times the other
Right.
picture is an unemployed waiter.
Right.
Right. So, where did this whole acting bug get into you?
Somewhere around when I was in the womb of my mother, actually. But no, it's something that I've always wanted to do, like my whole life. I grew up in El Paso, Texas, right? So not much in the way of film production actually happens there. You get like theater every now and then. I did some of that in school and whatnot. But, as I got older, I kind of started to let go of that dream a little bit just because not much, shoots there. And I was more interested in film than I was in theater. So, went and got regular job, went to college, actually ended up going back and getting my master's in business and worked in finance, right? So finance was the career for me for over 10 years. And that's the career that ended up moving me from El Paso to Chicago. And once I landed in Chicago, I started to revisit the idea a little bit. I was like, wait a minute, now I live in a big city. I live in a city where, they're shooting all kinds of films, all kinds of shows. You've got Chicago Fire, Chicago PD, Chicago Med, all this stuff. Let me kind of re-explore it a little bit. And so I kind of went in, I did a quick search. I ended up landing on this Facebook page where you can be an extra, which is basically a kind of like a background actor that doesn't have any lines. You just kind of fill the space a little bit for the show, for Chicago PD. So I submitted my picture. I just filled out a form with some of my details and stuff, submitted it, and within about 15 minutes, they reached out to me and told me, can you come in tomorrow? So then I went in, and that was kind of the beginning of the whole thing. And then they kept calling me back in to do that. And then every time I was on a set, I would just ask a million questions because I wanted to find out what the difference was between, like, why don't I have lines, but why does that person have lines? So I started asking, and people started telling me, oh, you need to get an agent, and, which agents to, go for and stuff. So that's kind of was the beginning of my path.
So was this is this a labor of love, passion? Or was this about, oh my God, I'm going to make millions being an actor?
No, it was a passion for me. I just remember like my whole life, I loved going to the movies and watching a movie. And every time I would leave the theater, I just felt like I was, that main character. And in my head, I was that person. And, I just kind of felt it so deep within. But so it was kind of a passion for me. The other part of that is I grew up I'm Muslim, I'm Middle Eastern, and I grew up with a narrative in the media, in Hollywood and in mainstream media that vilified Middle Eastern people.
Negative connotation.
Yeah, vilified Muslims,
Sure.
vilified Arabs. So especially after 9/11. So my intention was to get into the industry because I wanted to contribute in some form to changing the narrative and taking control of it and writing, correcting what was incorrectly said about my people. So that's kind of became really the driving force for me to actually take the risk and take the leap into it.
Got it. Okay. So where do you go from acting? You're in the finance industry, right? That's kind of your full-time job.
Yep.
And then you're doing acting to real estate. How does real estate come into play?
Well, my wife and I we're both very ambitious and very kind of entrepreneurial minded. So for a couple of years, we had kept coming up with business ideas, right? And we're like, oh, let's start this fashion brand. My wife had a really good idea for like a fashion brand. So we wanted to do that. And we started taking the first initial steps for that. And then it would fall by the wayside. And then like another idea and another idea. I'm like, oh, this is great. This is just a great opportunity. There's a market for this. Let's go ahead and do it. And everything would just fall by the wayside. And then we ended up coming across an ad that you guys had put out. And we decided to go ahead and do it. My wife actually found it, and it was the one that kind of decided to go in and try one of the free seminars. And this we've always been interested in real estate. Me personally, I was always around it, even in El Paso, Texas, because my dad did it. So my dad was an immigrant from Egypt, and my mom as well. And my mom was always a housewife. My dad worked his butt off, like overtime. Sometimes we wouldn't see him for a couple of weeks just so that he could earn extra cash. And then once he would build up enough of a cash pile, he would go out and find a property that he could buy all cash. And
Old school way of kind of doing
old
it.
school way of doing it. Buy the property cash. He was, like most immigrants, very, I don't want
No
to deal with
risk.
loans. I don't want the risk of loans. I don't want to owe debt. So he would just pile up cash as much as he could, buy a cheap property, fix it. We'd literally go as a family to like do, the cleanup and the fixing and things like that. And then my dad would go out and find a tenant. And because he wasn't good at typing, and at the time, this is literally, I'm aging myself now, but it was before we even had a personal computer at home, but we had an old typewriter. So I would actually type up the leases on the typewriter up until I got to high school, and there was a computer center. And I went to go show my dad, look how easy it is to just like, all you have to do is hit delete and you can delete the mistake and you don't have to white it out. So then we finally got a computer, but I would write up the leases and everything that my dad needed me to write up. And so it was always in my family. Now, fast forward to.
So hold on before you move forward, because to me this is a story of, it could be Irish, it could be Italian, right? We see that in Chicago. It could be Hispanic, of people who are not barely middle class, right?
Yeah.
Meaning they don't have a lot of money,
Right.
Right? They're barely making ends meet, but they have this discipline of saving a little bit. And in your dad's case, he's taking that money, putting it into real estate,
Right.
I'm sure there was no a big plan that I'm going to become a multimillionaire, but can you talk about like what was as a family, right? I mean, clearly years and years and years, you guys barely grew up as a middle class family, right? But yet that has seen through not only your mom, but it's became a part of his estate.
Yeah,
Right?
absolutely.
Can you talk about that? Because a lot of times people don't see, they see, oh my God, this person is a multimillionaire now, right? But that's not how it was, kind of what you were painting that picture.
Right. No. So my parents, like I said, they're immigrants from Egypt, and my dad was a teacher in Egypt, actually. So he had a profession, and he was college educated and everything. Of course, when he came to America, they didn't recognize his college degree, so they wanted him to go back and do college all over again. So at the time, he had come with him and his brother. So they both enrolled in the university and started the curriculum and everything. And my dad just could not do it. One reason that I remember him citing was just the disrespect that he saw from students towards the teacher, him being a teacher himself. He just couldn't handle going and getting working all this time to get a degree just to be disrespected by the students. Because in Egypt, you go in the classroom, students respect whoever's teaching. So he decided to actually drop out of college here, and then just go and find jobs and try to find another way to make a living. So,
Okay. So those properties that he bought, right, at the time, and this is, mind you, in El Paso, Texas,
Yes.
right? So El Paso, Texas is a tertiary market in Texas, right? Smaller city. How many properties did he end up with in the end?
he ended up with 6 total properties.
Six
in the
total
end,
properties.
which took years to build.
Right, 20, 30 years of his life.
Yeah, because it was again just the old school, just pile up cash and buy it all cash.
Right. And was he buying like fixer-uppers, as we would call it today? Did he think about equity? Was he thinking about cash flow? How was he buying those?
He was always thinking about equity, and he was always thinking about rent and the net cash flow. But there was never any gut rehabs. It was always just very cosmetic stuff. And like I said, we would paint the walls, we'd put in the flooring ourselves and things like that. But it wasn't anything that was like a major rehab. It was something that we could buy, that we could fix up ourselves and then rent out.
So somewhere did that seed of kind of, entrepreneurship or real estate investing that, hey man, this works, right? It may not be very glorious, but this works. Did that get planted somewhere in your mind or your wife's mind?
Always, always. And I think, fast forward to 2011, my dad ended up passing away from cancer. And so I saw firsthand the power of having rental properties. Of course, like my brothers and I have two younger brothers. We all ended up finding our professions. We have we had great careers. Of course, I'm talking about my career in finance before acting. But, so we would have, of course, taken care of my mother. But we did not have to, because those rental properties were there, left behind from my father and all the work that he did and that we did as a family, that rental income now provided for my mom. So she was able to sustain on her own, having never worked a day in her life in America, other than, of course, being a full-time mother and a housewife, which in itself is, of course, a very valuable, full-time job, just something that you don't get paid for monetarily. So
Right. I mean, all the properties, all these years you had set aside,
Yep.
right? No debt on them. Now, actually, it becomes a cash flow property,
Yep.
right? And it basically pays dividends forwards.
Yeah.
So you show up at one of the events, right? You show up at a 3-day, or you came to one of the conferences?
we came to one of the free
RIA,
weekly RIA meetings.
Okay,
Yep.
got it. And then what was because you've been in the financial industry, you've kind of been in the whole seminar model, selling people into a course, and so you've seen the racket behind it.
Yep.
Unfortunately, right? Was there a sense of skepticism initially whenever I'm like, hey guys, you could really create a lot of cash flow? I mean, this is not a joke. This is not get rich quick, but if it's done in a sustained, well thought through manner, you could really make a difference.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I was super skeptical because I had worked for right before that. I had worked for a different company that had a very similar seminar model.
Sure.
You do the free thing for a few hours, you bring people in, and so all exactly the same thing. So my wife was like, let's go
In the stock space.
in the stock market
stock
space,
market
stock
space.
market trading education. Yeah. So my wife, found this thing, wanted to go. I said, okay, sure, but I can tell you. So we parked the car, like, I'll tell you what's going to happen. We're going to walk into the room. There's going to be a table in the back with somebody on a laptop, and they're going to be the ones that are going to be trying to take people and sell people. And then you're going to go. And I just kind of laid out the whole plan. And then we walked in the conference room. It was at the Holiday Inn downtown, actually, I remember at the time. And then we walk in, and I walk in. I see. I don't remember who it was at the time, but somebody sitting on a laptop, and I was like, you see, here we go. It's just nothing but a sale. We're just gonna sell. But we just went and sat down anyway. And then you came up and you started speaking, and I had my guard up. And I will tell you this: within about 30 minutes of listening to you speak, my guard came down, and that was because you were not talking about something that was just like, you weren't selling this like highfalutin lifestyle, this like glitz and glamour, stuff. It was like right down to business. It was a very conservative approach to real estate investing that I guess somewhat subconsciously aligned with how my dad,
what your own father had done.
right.
Right.
So then I was sold. I was like, okay, I want to hear more about what this guy has to say.
Got it. So at that point, your wife happens to be a pharmacist.
Right.
Right. So she has a full-time job doing that. You're doing this acting thing, right? And then what was the next step? I mean, you're like, okay, at least this guy's not making up stuff.
Yeah.
Right. At least whatever the information is pretty transparent.
Right.
Right. So were you guys thinking in terms of flips at that time? Were you thinking in terms of rentals? What was the thought process?
We were always rental minded because both of us wanted some source of passive income that is the same, consistent, month after month after month. So yes, we were open to flips, we were open to other strategies, but we went into this with the mindset that we want to accumulate and build a rental portfolio that will pay every single month so that we don't have to be dependent on jobs, because it doesn't matter how good you think you are at your job or how well liked you are, you're always dispensable. And I know this firsthand because if I could share a little bit of my story from my finance and how I got transitioned into acting, is that I used to work for one of the biggest financial companies in the country. I won't mention their name, but the reason I came to Chicago is because they wanted me to help them come over here and build up a new sales department that they wanted to build, which I did. fast forward a little bit later, we're the superstar department. Literally, the CEO of the company and the whole C-suite knows exactly who we are. They're super happy with all the business that we're bringing in. And then I end up one day discovering that some of the people in my department are doing some pretty unethical things and fudging numbers and whatnot. So I do what I thought was the right thing, the ethical thing, and I reported that to my manager. Manager, oh, thank you. Yeah, we're going to report it. Anyway, fast forward, the news got all the way up to the C-suite because now this superstar department that we just built has a black eye because of this unethical stuff that they were doing. And they ended up investigating and stuff. The people that were doing it, I reported one person. They did an investigation and found two other people were doing the same thing within my department. They got a little bit of a slap on the hand, but got to keep their job. And somehow, a couple months later, they found a reason to let me go instead. So I say that I got fired for being a whistleblower because I uncovered something and kind of gave our superstar department a black eye.
You're rocking the boat, basically.
Rocking the boat, and in a way that they didn't like. And so I was ousted after a 10-year career and after uprooting my entire life to come to Chicago for them. So you're always dispensable. It does not matter how well liked you are. You think you are at work. It doesn't matter how good of a job. At the end of the day, a corporate life is all about the numbers, and it's all about whatever it is that they decide it's going to be about, and you are always going to be dispensable. So we didn't want to be tied down and locked in to the corporate world. Luckily, she still has her job, and but we don't want her to have to give her time in exchange for money for too many years to come. So we wanted to build some sort of a wealth generator outside of our jobs that we could eventually, use to retire her as well.
Okay. So you, your wife, both, you guys are pretty serious people, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you guys are not the type of people who are going to go fool around with things,
Right.
Once you guys have your mindset, you're pretty dedicated to what is it that you guys, that's just your personalities, right? When you came to Mastery initially, it was a struggle.
Yeah.
Now, number one, it was in the middle of the whole Corona crisis,
Yep.
right? I mean, right when we get all shut down, suddenly you're like, okay, I'm going to do this real estate thing,
Yeah.
and everything is shut down. The world is shut down.
Yeah.
Can you talk through that process? Because today, how many properties do you have today?
Today we've got 15.
15. Okay. So somebody sees that number, they're like, oh my God,
Yeah.
it's all made. Well, he was an actor, he must be dynamic, right? He was in the finance industry, or his wife is a pharmacist,
Yeah.
right? Yet nobody goes back and sees the struggle and the frustration you guys were going through. And
Right.
each one of us goes through that. Can you talk through that a little bit?
Yeah. I mean, it was a struggle. First of all, like I said, we joined the Mastery program right before COVID shut down. In fact, I remember I ended up actually having to go to New York City to do a show out there, and I was going to stay there for a couple of months. So I left, and my wife Andrea ended up coming to the 3-day seminar, the Cashflow conference. And I remember being on the phone. I'm in New York, and we're rehearsing for the show, and she's there on day 3, and we're like, "Should we do it? Should we do it?" I was like, "Let's just do it. Let's just do it. We've always had these ideas. We never execute. The mentorship is going to help us execute." So we just decided to leap in, and then of course, COVID shuts everything down. I ended up, coming back because Broadway shut down like 3 days before our first show. So I came back early, and Mastery wasn't going to have the classes in person anymore. So everything switched online. So we joined in 2020. So we spent all of 2020, doing online classes with you guys, learning the ropes, then, learning how to put in offers. And at first, putting in an offer was such a big deal for us. It's just kind of this thing that we're like, I don't know what to do, but let's just do it. Now, of course, it's second nature. You can put in an offer like that, right? But
So hold on.
yeah.
At that time, it didn't come, because this is a lot of times the excuse is, well,
Yeah.
no, Andrew, I'm busy,
right,
right? I got this show. In your case,
Yeah.
you're going to go to New York. Your wife, full-time job as a pharmacist. I mean, that's no joke, right? And so you guys had every reason why not to get started. Because a lot of times people will go get excited about an idea for a day or two, and yet find a reason because they don't have the time,
yeah,
right? You guys did not have the time.
right.
So what kept you going?
the reason that we wanted to do this, even though we didn't have the time, is because we wanted to have the time. We wanted to get our time back. And the only way that you can do that is to make the necessary sacrifices on whatever little spare time you have to dedicate towards eventually getting your time back.
And I wanted to make that point because a lot of times people don't get that.
Yeah.
That they're like, Andrew, but I'm already busy. I'm like, I understand you're already busy. The problem with that busy situation is you're always going to be that busy, if
Right.
not more. Right. And at some point, if you want to grow, you want to take it to the next level, you're going to have to dedicate more time so that in the long run, you can buy your time back.
Exactly, because we were tired of trading our time for money, right? Anybody who begins an entrepreneurial journey eventually is going to hear that line. You want to not have to exchange your time for money, right? You want to be able to have your money working for you so that you can have financial freedom and have that time freedom. You'd be able to use your time however you want to do it with whoever you want to do it. Anybody on the entrepreneurial journey or on an entrepreneurial mindset is going to come across that mindset. So that's why we wanted to do what we wanted to do. And for us, we saw the value of the mentorship, right? Because again, we kept thinking of ideas. We had a million ideas, as entrepreneurial minded people, and we never executed on them. We began the steps, but eventually it would fall off because of, we didn't have time. So we saw mentorship as the fast track, right? Yes, we're time constrained, we're both working, et cetera, but with the mentorship, that's gonna provide a sense of accountability to us and allow us the fast track to get where we want to be.
Got it. So, and that's such an important point because a lot of times what people think is, well, I'm 40 years old, right? By the time I'm 42, I want to be rich,
Right.
That's not how it works. Like if you start in your 40s and do everything correctly, right? Step by step by step by step, by the time you're 45, 47, 48, you'll be in a position to start gradually taking the pedal off. Not just suddenly quitting, but start gradually saying, okay, I can make a little bit different choice in life. By the time you're 50, 52, suddenly people are like, oh my God, you have 20 properties. 20, oh my God, I wish I had that.
Yeah.
What nobody looks at is what it took. And what's funny today is we have people that are 18, 20, 22, and they're like, man, it's not going fast enough. I don't have 20 properties. I'm like, at 20 years old, what were we doing?
Oh my God,
right?
I
What
wish.
were we? And a lot of times there is a gestation period to any little thing. And the cool part about today, technology, about finances, is that what we could accomplish by the time we got 45, 50, 55, today you can accomplish literally by the time you're 25, 28, 30 years old. So that time has shrunk literally by 15 to 20 years.
Oh yeah. Technology's allowed for that, and now with AI, I mean, it's just going to be, the time I think is going to shrink even more with all the technology and everything that's out there. I mean, the possibilities now for a teenager, somebody in their late teens, early 20s, just things that did not exist when we were that age. And it's all because of the little device that's in everybody's pocket that everybody calls a phone, when in reality, the phone is the smallest function on that thing. You have the whole world in your pocket. And now you're going to have the AI, you're going to have the knowledge of the entire world and the ability for it to think for you and create for you, which is something we didn't even have at the beginning of all this up until now. So, I mean, the possibilities now are just unbelievable.
It's mind-blowing.
Unbelievable.
It's mind-blowing. So let's talk through one of your transactions.
Sure.
Right? I remember one of the first transactions, actually, I came there, a bunch of people from Mastery came there. We all come there. It's a nice, big, huge, what was it, 4-unit building?
It was a 2-unit that
2-unit.
could have been the building itself was the size of a 4-unit. It was humongous, but it was just a two flat.
A 2-unit building. And you guys went through the whole process, the inspections, the everything, and yet you had to end up dropping the property.
Yeah.
Good decision now, bad decision now thinking back.
I still a good decision thinking back, and it was a great learning lesson. That was, like I said, when we first, that 2020, that year, we submitted offers. I mean, we joined in March of 2020. We didn't even get an actual property closed until December of that year. So this was kind of in the middle of that, where we had been putting in offer after offer. We finally get an offer accepted on this 2-unit building in Joliet. And we go and we see it. It was such a high building, though, that we could never really see the roof. And it was a flat roof with parapet walls. But we were told that it was recently, renewed and taken care of. So we went through, did the whole thing that you teach in Mastery, crunched the numbers. It seemed like a great deal. We submitted it to you guys. You guys said, yes, this is a great deal. We're like super excited.
Assuming the rehab comes in.
Assuming the rehab. We had the rehab, I believe, if I remember correctly, estimated at around $60,000. And then, but we just really wanted to confirm that roof. So this was not including the roof, not having seen the roof. Then finally, we ended up getting somebody to go, during the attorney review period, go up on the roof. And so we went up there. I actually went up on the roof with them. And of course, what the seller was telling us about the roof was absolutely false. The roof was in horrible shape. The parapet walls were in horrible shape. So we got a quote for work to fix up the roof. It was going to need a brand new roof. It was going to need, probably rebuild some of that parapet wall. It ended up almost doubling our rehab number. So we very reluctantly had to walk away from that deal. So, but in retrospect, though, even now, knowing what we know now and being much more experienced, about 5 years in now, it still wouldn't have worked out.
It's an important concept that just because you can do something doesn't mean you should.
Right.
And the best deals sometimes are not the ones you buy, but the ones you walk away from. Because think about when you lose money. You only lose money on the deals that you actually buy.
Yeah.
Right? You may think, oh my God, it was a good deal, I lost it, so on and so forth. So generally, how are you doing area selection? Like we talk about area selection.
Yeah.
Was that something that you were familiar with? Because that's an important concept, right?
Yeah.
What areas you're buying properties in.
Mm-hmm. I mean, not before coming to Mastery. It's not something I thought about. Like I said, my dad did it kind of the old school way, but with the formal training that we received here, obviously area selections is a crucial part of our, method to finding stuff. And we like to stick to nicer areas. A lot of investors are a little bit more adventurous and they'll go into maybe, like a C area or something, but we like to stick to like A or B areas, areas that, we wouldn't mind living in ourselves, basically. So.
Okay. So basically your whole portfolio, is that like, did it start out with some B minus C areas and over time you're improving the areas you're buying in?
Yeah, for sure. Just with experience. Just with the rehabs and just also the tenant pools that we're finding and everything, and the different challenges that we've experienced over the last 5 years, we've kind of pivoted. We did start with some C plus areas and then kind of gradually pivoted over to, sticking to A and B areas. So.
Got it. And as far as you've done some flips.
Yep.
How many flips have you done?
Oh, man. I think we are about to close on the sale of our 4th flip and about to start our 5th flip, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how do you look at flipping? Because flipping is not a business you're in.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a byproduct of you just looking for transactions?
Flipping is a means to eventually build wealth through rentals, right? Okay. So if you're short on cash and you want to build up a nice cash pile, flipping is the way to go because not everybody's got the funds to just start building a portfolio of rentals right away, because no matter what we say, you cannot do it with zero money. You need to have maybe, 10, 20, 25,000 saved up for certain, transactional costs and things like that. So you need a little bit of a cushion to start building a rental portfolio. So if you're getting started without that cushion, you can get started flipping right away and make a great amount of cash in a very short amount of time if you're crunching the numbers right and you're doing your rehab on time and on budget. So flipping is a means to build up the cash to eventually start building wealth, true wealth, with a rental portfolio, in my opinion.
Got it. So basically with the flips, right? Like you talked about frictional costs, which most people don't account for. Even if I buy a property, let's just say for 130, you put 30,000 extra in terms of rehab. You borrow all those funds, purchase as well as rehab. Now you need money, some for closing costs. You need money to be able to service the debt while you're fixing up the property, right? You need money from somewhere, right? Either you have a great job, either you do some side work, right? Whatever you do, but that money is required. And not every property you're going to be able to recycle 100% out. That's just not possible all the time. You try to do that, but it's not going to work every single time.
Sure.
Right? So that frictional cost has to come from somewhere, and this is where a lot of people in real estate go wrong. they'll suddenly quit their job. And, oh my God, I did one flip. Now I'm going to be Mr. Flipper.
Yeah.
And it ends very badly for them,
Oh, yeah.
right? It ends very, very badly. So in your case, whenever you're doing a flip, right, what has been your average per flip?
About 40 to 50,000.
40 to 50,000. Now, if I wind the clock back in, say, 2019, somebody said, you know, man, you could do 4 or 5 flips and every time you'll make 45, 50,000 bucks. Would you have believed it?
I mean, even if I believed them, I would just think it's not for me. It's not something that I know how to do. So,
Right.
yeah.
And yet, and it would have, for people who don't do this, it seems like a fortune.
Right.
Right. And people who do a few flips and they think they're making a lot of money, it's not a lot of money.
No.
It's good money, but then you need to redeploy it back into building a rental portfolio.
Right.
Now, if you do it with smaller properties, single families, duplexes, that's fine. You do it with a little bit bigger properties, that's fine. But that money needs to go back, not in your pocket, not on a vacation, not buying a car, right? You guys haven't upgraded your lifestyle suddenly because you have decent cash flow.
Right.
You guys are keep putting it back into the business, If you look at the average multimillionaire in America, they have a small business generally, and they keep deploying much more of the capital back into their businesses. By the time they're older, they're hoping they end up in a place where they're financially independent.
Yeah,
Right?
absolutely.
I mean, this is the story of American business. A lot of times people have a very convoluted picture because of social media.
Yeah.
Right?
And I think people have lost the concept of delayed gratification, right? And again, social media probably has a lot to do with that. And just the way that people are brought up these days, it's like, I need it and I need it now. Everybody's looking for instant pleasure, instant gratification. But if you just kind of put on that delayed gratification mindset and keep your lifestyle the way it is, no need to show off, no need for the glitz and glamour, get that cash, throw it back in the business for just at least for just the beginning few years, it's going to make such a tremendous change and improvement in your financial situation.
So for you guys, right? I mean, I would call you guys a working professional couple.
Yeah.
That's very conservative in terms of how you live. Does that come from, you think, your family background? Does it come because of your faith? Where does that come from?
I think it comes from both. It comes from a lot of it with my family background. Growing up, we weren't, the most wealthy family, and just seeing how hard my parents worked and also how conscious they were about the spending and everything. And then also with my wife, grew up with kind of difficult circumstances in her childhood and stuff that kind of built a perception of value with money. That money is important. It's not everything, but it is important, and you shouldn't just be mindless with spending. So, and we're both just people that don't care too much for like the fancy things. I think that's a great match that we lucked out on, is that, even my wife, doesn't care too much about like name brand things and having the $3,000 purses and all that stuff.
At some point, you have to put money to work for it to take care of you. I mean, we've said this a million times, which is, if you take care of real estate for the first 5 years, real estate will take care of you for the rest of your life. But that foundation is important, like with anything else. Right? It's no different for real estate. Now, in the meantime, on top of that, you had one child.
Yep.
Now you're expecting another one pretty damn soon.
Yep.
So it's not like life hasn't been full of
Right.
a bunch of the family part of it that continues to happen. Where do you guys see yourself in another, say, 2 to 3 years?
Honestly, we just want to keep growing. We've tried to put like a number in place as to like where we want to end, but we don't really have a specific number. And that's the beautiful thing about this, is that once you get into this, the sky's the limit, right? You can stop whenever you want to stop. Like, we could have stopped at 5, we could have stopped at 10, but we just want to keep going. And there's other people in Mastery that they'll be in it for 3 years and boom, they have like 20 properties. For us, it's about living our life and also just continuously doing this and doing it at our own pace, the way that we want to do it, and to grow the way that we want to grow. So for us, it's not something that we are going to say, oh, we're going to do this for another 5 years and make, our goal is like 20,000 a month and then, stop. that's kind of like, I say 20,000 a month because in my head, that's kind of like where I want to be, right?
Sure.
For me, it's like, I want to make, at least 20,000 a month consistently in cash flow every month. That's my kind of like personal initial goal. But then after that, it's like, you can just keep going because also there's different phases of life. Like right now we're super busy, right? We're both working. We have, we're trying to raise a family and everything, but maybe in 20 years or something when our kids are older, maybe we have more time to dedicate back into it, or maybe we want to hit the brakes and enjoy what we've done for the last 20 years. Who knows? So, but the beautiful thing is that the sky is the limit with this.
So the market is hot, at least the Chicago market, as we do, especially in decent areas, right? The market has not let up here.
Yeah.
Florida is different, Texas is different today as we speak, right? 2 years ago, it was a different story. So how are you finding properties today? How are you sourcing properties? Because consistently, you're still able to find a flip here or there, a rental here or there, and you continue to grow. How do you find it today?
Right now, it's mostly off market. Most of our portfolio up until about a year or so ago, maybe a little over a year, was MLS. We would just find deals. We'd find great deals on the MLS. We'd find short sales on the MLS. Now it's become a little bit more challenging on the MLS. So we've been working on the past year and a half on building relationships with wholesalers, trying to figure out other avenues of off-market acquisition. And that's what we're doing at the moment.
Got it. Okay. So what would you say to somebody listening to this, watching this, right? Because they may look at you and go, hey, man, he seems to have his act together, right? Because in last 3-4 years when you think about Corona, when you think about, you had a child in the middle of it. I mean, so now you have a 2-3-year-old, 2-year-old, right?
3-year-old, yeah.
You have your hands full. You have your mom today. She's older. You're taking care of her. So all that life is going that you seem to have your life together. What about them?
I think for anybody that's watching this, it's, everybody's busy and life is messy. And a lot of times we feel like we don't have time to dedicate to changing our life, but it's just about how badly you want it, right? And if you want it bad enough, you're going to find a way to make it work. It's about being resourceful and just going after what you want with a very narrow dedication to it. And I mean, like I said, we have a very busy, messy, beautiful life, and it's just the way it is. And nobody's just gonna. Not everybody's the same. If you're 20 years old and you're living with your parents and you decide you get into this, you're gonna have the time, right? But if you're in your mid 30s or 40s and you're trying to raise a family and also trying to figure out a way to make it, that's going to be a different situation. So it's just all about, choosing something and having the focus and determination to just make it happen and just seeing it through. And again, in my opinion, mentorship is the fast track to success. I don't care if it's real estate or whatever it is that you try to do. Find somebody that is already doing it. Find a program that will teach you how to do it and hold you accountable and hold your hand through the process, because that is the fast track to success. We've seen it firsthand with real estate, with you, and we couldn't be more grateful to you and to Rahul and to the Mastery team because it changed our life. And I think for anybody that's looking to do the same, find a mentor and go in that direction. It might cost you a pretty hefty fee, but I guarantee you it's going to be cheaper than going to college, and you're going to see results a lot faster than you did going to college, whether you've gone to college already and paid for it or you haven't.
No, I mean 100%. I couldn't say it's you were talking and I was just thinking about actors and all this kind of stuff. And I mean, if you look at people will obviously know these names. Like you look at somebody like Arnold Schwarzenegger, you look at somebody like Bruce Willis, you look at the Rambo guy, what's his name? Sylvester Stallone, right? And a lot of times people fail to realize that today it's very different. I mean, they may make hundreds of millions of dollars today, but if you look and go back and look at a lot of these guys, right, in California, right, and Arnold talks about it's a joke. He's like, we would lay bricks, would act in different movies, do bodybuilding, and they're buying six flats, right? And it almost seems like a joke, right? Arnold Schwarzenegger buying a six flat, but he's like, hey man, we used to sleep on the floor, right? Him and his other buddy, and it's a lot of people that we may look at and go, oh my God, right? Larger than life, yet most people have very humble beginnings, and real estate is a way, right? There's 10 things, but yet the great part about real estate is it's the greatest equalizer.
Absolutely.
Right? For me, coming from a real estate agent background, for you happens to be you were into acting, your wife happens to be a pharmacist. It doesn't really matter. It's what are you going to do with it.
Right.
Having said that, Bassam, this has been absolutely awesome. I think
you.
it'll be inspirational to a lot of people listening. The question is, the story is not about Bassam. The story is, what are you going to do with it? What is the opportunity that you have on hand? And you can either make an excuse that why I can't something or do something, or you can find a reason to do something and move forward. Having said that, thanks a bunch, guys. Like, love, share. This is Andrew Holmes with Cashflow for Life. Talk to you soon.